that's a figurative. Well, it's not figurative. That's what a relative. It's a relative term. Not very long. Well, that just depends on what you compare it to, right? Hallelujah, right? I mean, compared to Joe's sermon a couple of weeks ago, not very long. So, and what was it, Chuck? You were showing me that video a guy made. What was it about? Oh, he was discussing head coverings out of 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and head coverings on women. It was a 6-hour video, over 6 hours. 6 hours on head coverings. I don't even think I could preach that long on 6. Oh yeah, I could. But 6 hours on head coverings. I'm like, who's gonna watch it? Obviously you're gonna watch it in edible bits. But 6 hours on head coverings sounds fascinating. I wonder if he has any drawings. And now maybe it's blank for the first 5.5 hours, and he steps in the last half hour. Right? And how many of you could do 15 minutes on head coverings? 1 Corinthians chapter 11, right? Right? I mean, what's the typology? Who's the wife? Who's the woman? Who's the power over them? And what should it be? And, you could bring out the typology. You could bring out the figurativeness of it. You could bring out the actuality of it. How many of you ladies wear head coverings? If you were to get up here to pray to open up the service, would you put on a veil? You better. You better. If you're preaching, you better. Right? Yeah. A woman can stand up and preach if she veils. 1 Corinthians chapter 11 is very clear. Because there's a time she may have to, because all the men are cowards. That's usually what causes a woman to have to step up and lead, is because there's a barrack, right? And I can't go unless you send her with me. And God says, all right, but she's going to get the glory, not you. And and because men are scared of the pulpit, men are scared to lead. Women have to lead the choir. Women have to lead the music. Women have to lead. Women have to be all the Sunday school teachers. Why? Because men won't do it. They're scared of the kids. Oh my goodness! What do you think's going to happen if you teach the children, right? And so that way, the ladies always have to step up and take these roles and these leadership roles. And is it a problem? Well, you don't want to lose half your workforce, and ladies do a lot. Ladies are tremendous, right? And they can teach the Word of God, no doubt about it. But it's a shame if they have to do it just because the men won't. If they have to step up into the pulpit because God's forbidden me to be here as a woman to preach to a man, so in order for me to do it, I have to veil to show that I'm under authority. And I'm not usurping authority over a man. And that's what I believe the head covering's for, is for a woman who wants to pray or prophesy in the church. And I think I can prove that. And let's have some fun. Let's preach on head coverings. Okay, back over. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, we'll jump around a little bit. We're here, and we're here. Where? Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse number 1. And we're going to read verses 1 through 7. And then we'll take turns, and every person stands up and gets a verse and preaches on it for 3 minutes. That's impossible for Kessel. And no, we're not going to do that tonight. Although that happened in my old church, something similar one night. And Dr. Roach did that. It was amazing. Let's read it. Let's enjoy the Word of God, okay? Don't let this get too heavy on you tonight, all right? It can. You want to stand for the reading of God's Word? Andy, you're right. Let's stand for the reading of God's Word. We're only reading 7 verses, and we can stand for God's Word. Amen. I like that. I like to stand, and I like churches that do that. And I like it when the pastor has everybody stand and gives a 20-minute introduction. Pass it down. Amen, brother. Amen. And let's read verses 1 through 7. Father, would you bless the reading of the word? Thank you for the book. And keep thy foot when thou goest into the house of God, and be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools, for they consider not that they do evil. Be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before God. For God is in heaven, and thou upon the earth. Therefore let thy words be few. For a dream cometh through a multitude of business, and a fool's voice is known by the multitude of words. When thou vowest a vow unto God, defer not to pay it. For he hath no pleasure in fools. Pay that which thou hast vowed. Better is it that thou shouldest not vow, than that thou shouldest vow and not pay. Suffer not thy mouth to cause thy flesh to sin. Neither say thou before the angel that it was an error. Wherefore should God be angry at thy voice and destroy the work of thy hands? For in a multitude of dreams and in many words there are also diverse vanities. But fear thou God. Father, thank you for this. Thank you, in Jesus' name. Amen. You may sit down. The reverence of God. That's what we just stood before the Lord. To be reverent to God. To show God in his place. People say, well, why do you wear a shirt and tie to church? It's just the way I worship God. I know it's not necessary. I know it's not even our Baptist history. I know we were plainclothes people for most of our history. Why do you do this? Well, I borrowed it from the Protestants. I really did. The dress up on Sunday was a Protestant thing. Sunday best came from the Protestants. But I liked it. Why? Because I'll honor God. Because I can. Well, what happens if I don't have any? Well, then don't wear them. Don't wear what you don't have. That doesn't make any sense. Right? But if you can honor God, honor God. And I step up a little bit to show an honor to God. Now, if it was illegal, we were meeting in the woods, and I probably wouldn't show up like this. Would that be smart in an underground church and we all showed up? What are you guys doing? Playing cards. Oh, you always dress up with shirt ties to play cards. Oh, yeah, don't you? Uno. Right? It's a reverence to God, right? And this is why we've patterned our churches the way we have. This is why churches have developed. We know first century church didn't look like this. You mean they didn't have pews? Can you have a church without pews? I mean, those ungodly churches that are changing the chairs. And what if they didn't have a piano? I mean, you can't have church without a piano, right? Piano is church. Church is piano. I mean, without that, Now, what happened before they invented the piano? What did they do then? And garbage cans, right? What has this developed? And what we've developed has been a good thing. It's not a bad thing. We know that this is a cultural thing that we sit in among right here. And but our culture is moving to a very irreverent society. We don't revere anybody. Listen to what the news says about the president. Go back and listen to some news from the 70s and 80s and listen to the way they talk about the president and listen to it now. There was a much more honor to it. There's a little bit where they wouldn't say, it's surprising. You go back and you listen, you're like, wow. Then you come now and listen how irreverent they are in the way they talk about things. If we ever do, we go back to shepherding a child's heart. The number one lesson in shepherding a child's heart is, where are we in our society today? If you say to children, cop, what do they think? Brutal, right? You say dad, what do they think? Deadbeat, right? Yeah. You say politician, they think crooked. So the head of state, the head of family, and then pastor, they say pedophile. It's the number one thing that comes to kids' minds. The head of the state, the head of the family, and the head of the church are all wicked in kids' minds. And that's why authority is thrown out the window today. Right? And that's a pattern that our society is developing to be irreverent. Right? I tell the kids on my bus, it's not a cop, it's a police officer. And I said, if you ever want to get out of a ticket, you better call it right. And if it's you're on the highway, you better call him trooper. Don't call him officer. I learned that lesson. He's trooper, right? And you better show some respect. You see these people getting before a judge and not showing respect. Are you stupid? You show utmost respect to the judge, right? I've seen people yell at judges. It never has gone well with them. I know a guy that called a judge to his face an idiot. Yeah, he didn't get parole. He didn't make what respect and reverence. And our society is moving away. Is our church also following society? Yes. It's very difficult not to be influenced by your society. Very difficult. And as we're moving away from reverence. It's most noticeable in dress. People wear flannel to church. I mean, but you'll notice it most. My dad, I remember him saying about the clean shaven, about the clean haircut. But you don't walk around with your shirt untucked. That's a slob, and it's a lazy slob. That's how I was raised. It's very difficult for me to walk around with my shirt untucked. My kids say, well, it dates you, it makes you old. Yeah, it makes me old because back then they had some respect for themselves. And there was a different society back then when a man was a man. And he knew it was respectable and honorable to be a man. And a woman was a woman. And it was honorable and respectable to be a woman. And we weren't ashamed of what we were. And the whole idea of no self-respect And it's also reads out to no respect for others. If I have no respect for myself, I'll also have no respect for anybody else. And this is part of our tardiness, even to church, and our tardiness to think there's no respect. God's not even worthy to be on time for. More or less our jobs. Well, I don't know why they fired me. Well, you never got to work on time. And this whole idea, well, they can't do that. I'd like to see some of these guys go into the business world, and they look like they just got out of bed, and it's 2 PM, and their hair's all messed up, right? And they're kind of floppy, and they walk in for a job interview. I said, you know what I would have done? I would have filed your paper. I would have taken it and filed it right in number 13. Right? That's a cool file because it makes noise. Right. And that's file 13. And that's what we did with guys that walked in for an. If you can't dress up for an interview, I'm not going to have you represent my company. Are you kidding me? Now, I know we live in the world now where they always show the hippie sitting at home and he does great work, And there's some of that out there. I understand that. But character and reverence. And it takes a little bit of character to give reverence. Now, it's funny to see somebody who's totally irreverent. You ever meet somebody like that? And then all of a sudden they're in front of the judge, right? And you ever see somebody stand up? And maybe you don't get to the courtroom a lot. I went to the court one day, and I met 3 church members there. Is that a bad sign? And, it was great. And but I was in court, and the guy was standing there with a shirt and tie, and he looked so awkward because he's never wore one in his life. And I know he had, but he's trying to be honorable before the judge, and sir comes out of his mouth so awkwardly, and maybe just because I know him, but make an attempt to show some respect to the authority above him, and I thought, well, at least he's making an attempt, and that's a good thing. When it comes to coming before God and the reverence we have, JC and the boys, That's how some of the churches refer to Jesus Christ and the apostles. They call them JC and the boys. And if anybody would do that, now listen, it doesn't mean you're not saved. It just means you're stupid. Don't you stupid from the pulpit. Okay, it means they're ignorant. Right? They don't understand. They don't have the reverence for who God is. Right? And when the apostles came in, people were stunned. They're awed. This is an apostle of the Lord Jesus Christ. Thousands gathered at the end of John's life, the last living apostle, and he could hardly speak, and you could hardly hear him. The whole crowd would go hush. They carried him out on a stretcher because he could no longer walk, and they set him before and top, and the crowd would gather, and the entire crowd would go absolutely silenced to hear the voice of the last living apostle. And he'd speak. And it was awe-inspiring. They thought that people would want to bow to them. People would want to show them too much honor. And they'd be like, give that only to God. I'm an apostle. But you know what they thought of Peter when he walked by and his shadow healed people. And God gave extreme reverence to his men. And these are apostles. You're going to get to heaven, I hope, if you're saved. And you're going to see the city of God and its foundations. There's a name of an apostle on the foundation. Now, some people say, well, that's typological. It may be typological. Maybe it's not physical. Maybe it's typological, that the city's built on the foundation of the apostles. But he says their names written on it. Well, how could you have 12 foundations? Well, you figure it out. I'll show you a picture. And their names are there. God has honored these men, should we? Yeah. Well, who's God given the most honor to? How about Christ? How much should we honor Christ? Lordy, Lordy, I guess he's 40. Man, who would say something like that? Especially when he's turning 50. Lord, he's the Lord, the reverence that we would have for God. If there's anything I love about Puritans, is their reverence. The Puritans had a reverence for God, And like my friend Kent, when he saw that coffee mark in my Bible, just went off. And he said, when you go walking out to somebody's house, and you never put something on top of the Bible. In my house, nothing goes on top of the Bible. I don't put bulletins on top of it. I don't put another book on top of it. Nothing can go on a Bible but a Bible. Why? Because that's God's holy book. Nothing goes above it. And I had a coffee stain here where I put a coffee cup on there, and he took me through the ringer. He was right. He said, that's irreverent. It's God's holy word. And you're setting your coffee cup on it. Is he wrong? Are we overboard? Do you want to get to heaven and God says, you know, you were way too reverent. You just had way too much respect for me and my stuff. It used to be parents would yell, hey, we don't run in church. This is God's house. Treat it with some respect. Now, okay, we're thinking about the building. Is the building really God's house? But the mindset behind that was not wrong. The mindset behind that was church is different. Jesus said, when the church gathers, I'm there. That makes it's not the same as when other people gather in other places. Go to the gym and gather with your friends. Jesus doesn't promise to be there. It's different. The purpose is different. The meaning is different. The structure is different. And God says here, when thou keep your foot, when thou goest into the house of God, go in carefully and thoughtfully. That's what my Bible says. I know your Bible doesn't say that, but you know it's the right Bible. I wrote that in. Go in carefully and thoughtfully. 1 Timothy 3:15 says the house of God, which is the church. It says the church, which is the house of God. So now we're talking about entering in, not a building, but a group of people. They just happen to be in this building. You are the church of Jesus Christ. You are the house of God. The people are the church. And when I step in among you, God says, keep your foot. Go in carefully. Go in reverently. Go in thoughtfully. Kessel took over the music leading, and he came along well. He preached about half the songs, and I'm not going to say anything about our current song leader. I mean, I don't know if any of you noticed this morning, but I sure did. And he's starting to preach before he led the song. It's coming. The poor fool, brother. Do you see what's happening to this poor guy? He has no idea. But today, for the first time, he bashed out. Did you notice it, Joe? Did you see it? Amen. You saw it? Yes, poor fool. Oh man, he has no idea. Anyway, huh? Oh yeah. Oh. He'll be stopping in between verses. He'll be crying. He'll be like, "Oh yes, and God, oh, amen." Right? How you be preaching? And yeah, Billy Sunday lives. And go in thoughtfully and carefully into the house of God. Think about it. And Kessel came along, and and now his Kessel Jr. is coming along, and they're coming along with this. Hey, think about what you're singing. Yeah. Hey, think about what we just sang. Right? And pretty soon, and you can see the passion coming as he's leading music, and the songs get into his heart, and it's just so awesome. Matthew went through the same thing. Just a short time he started leading music, the music gets into your heart. These hymns get into your heart if you think about what you're singing and you sing it unto God. And that last song, the fight is on. Wow! Do you read some of that? I mean, I know some of it's all millennial, and Joe is loving it, but if you take the victory day that they sing about as your day you enter heaven, rather than the day we conquer the whole earth for Jesus, wow, that's a good song. And that's when you enter. Look at Psalm 66. Psalm 66. In my mind, Psalm 66 would be very humanistic. The numbers in the book of Psalms are unique. Anybody know why the numbers in the book of Psalms are unique? The Psalm numbers? Well, because the song numbers are part of the numbers that are original. The rest of the numbers and chapters are added by man, and they're not inspired. They're 1,000 years after the Bible was finished. But these songs were already divided prior to by the Hebrews. So the numbers actually are inspired. Now, the number themselves written there is not, but that it was in this order. Have we rearranged the order of Psalms? Look what it says in 60. Would 66 then be a humanistic psalm? Human as far as Man looking at God. Make a joyful noise unto the Lord. Make a joyful noise unto God, all ye lands. We're going to be focusing on verse 14, but we'll get there. Sing forth the honor of his name. Make his praise glorious. Say unto God, how terrible art thy works. If any of you are familiar with Ecclesiastes, you want to compare this psalm to Ecclesiastes. It's amazing. Through the greatness of thy power shall thy enemies submit themselves unto thee. Oh, I just was preaching that today. What's it mean to be more than a conqueror? A conqueror defeats his enemy. More than a conqueror turns his enemy into his ally. God more than conquered the Apostle Paul. He took Saul and made him the apostle. The head spokesman for Christianity came from the head enemy of Christianity. That's more than a conqueror. Just conquering the devil can do. But to more than conquer, right? The enemies shall submit themselves unto thee. Oh boy. The earth shall worship thee and shall sing unto thee. They shall sing to thy name, Selah. Come and see the works of God. He is terrible in his doings toward the children of men. He turneth the sea into dry land. They went through the flood on foot. There did we rejoice in him. He ruleth by his power forever. His eyes behold the nations. Let not the rebellious exalt themselves, Selah. O bless our God, ye people, and make the voice of his praise to be heard, which holdeth our soul in life. Oh. You understand that? That's a philosophical thought. That's so awesome. Why? It's contingency. It's absolute contingency, upholding all things by the word of his power. Are you one of those things? Your very soul, what is the energy that we know the energy that the body lives on. What energy does the soul live on? If the soul is real and the soul exists, it must have an energy source in order for it to be real, in order for it to exist. What is the source of its energy? What sustains a soul in existence? Which holdeth our soul in life, and suffereth not our feet to be moved. For thou, O God, hast proved us, and hast tried us as silver is tried. Thou brought us unto the net. Thou laidest affliction upon our loins. Thou hast caused men to ride over our heads. We went through the fire and through the water, but thou broughtest us out unto a wealthy place. I will go into the house and with burnt offerings. I will pay thee my vows, which my lips have uttered, and my mouth hath spoken when I was in trouble. Any of you remember any of those? Has anybody made any vows when you were in trouble? Oh God, if you do this for me, I will offer up to thee burnt sacrifice of fatlings with the incense of rams. I will offer bullocks with goats, Selah. Come and hear. Notice before it was come and see. Now it's come and hear. All ye that fear God, and I will declare what he hath done for my soul. I cried unto him with my mouth, and he was extolled of my tongue. If I regard iniquity in my heart, the Lord will not hear me. But verily God hath heard me. He hath attained to my voice of my prayer. Blessed be God, which hath not turned away my prayer, nor his mercy from me. Woohoo! I tell you what, you come into the Lord's house, right? Keep thy foot when thou goest into the house of God. Be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools. What is this idea? I have paid my vows unto God. I come before the Lord. I come before the Lord thoughtfully and reverently to sing these praises. And God is terrible. He's awe-inspiring in his work among men. Awe-inspiring. That's the word terrible means awe-inspiring. Come and see. Come and hear, he talks about. As it says in Ecclesiastes 5, keep thy foot when thou goest into the house of God. We're going to get to this vow idea. You already know we read about these vows, these words that come out of my mouth before God. You say, well, yeah, but I never said to God, well, you know, God, I promise to do this if you do this. I never made a vow. Okay. Comes out in more ways than you might think, too. Listen to yourself carefully, right? But it says here, verse number 1, it says, keep thy foot when thou goest into the house of God, Ecclesiastes 5:1. Be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools. We all know that. God gave you one mouth and two ears for a reason. Right? And we use that little joke, little acronym. We like that, right? Because it's true, right? Be slow to speak and quick to hear. James tells us this, too. You can see James will pick up on this, right? And how many of you ever told yourself to shut up? How'd it go? Barb says many times, right? And some of you think, Pastor, how come you don't do that? Okay. Don't laugh at that, bro. That wasn't funny. And the Bible here talks about, look at verse number 1, the sacrifice of a fool. And you might be interested in marking your Bible, but Hebrews chapter 13, verse 15 talks about, let us offer to him the sacrifice of praise. In another place he talks about sacrifice, even the praise of our lips. The sacrifice that God talks about. Let me read Hebrews 13:15 to you. And let's have Joe read it. Joe, you read Hebrews 13:15 because Joe loves the book of Hebrews right now. It's his favorite book. It's his life study. He'll be there the rest of his life. So you made it to what, verse 1:1 now? So read Hebrews 13:15, brother, if you would.
By him, therefore, let us offer the sacrifice of praise to God continually. That is the fruit of our lips, giving thanks to his name.
So this is the sacrifice that God wants from you. The fruit of your lips giving thanks. When is that a sacrifice? When you can't think of anything to be thankful for? Where you're hurting so bad inside? He said, make it a sacrifice. Make it a sacrifice. When is it a sacrifice to praise God? It's certainly not when you win the lottery, right? Did anybody ever claim that $2 billion? Anybody know? I know I went for it was in California, they sold the ticket, but nobody claimed it. Nobody's brought the ticket back in. It's only worth $2 billion. Could you imagine? Man, just think about all you could do for God with that. I hope you don't think that way. Right? That's not how God works. No way. The sacrifice of praise. Here he talks about the sacrifice of a fool. The sacrifice of a fool. We also know the sacrifice of a wicked is an abomination. Proverbs 15:8 and Proverbs 21:27 says that the same thing. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination. How much more when he brings it with a wicked mind? So we have the sacrifice that God says. The sacrifice he's talking about is what's coming out of your mouth. The sacrifice of praise to our God. The sacrifice of thanksgiving to our God. Right? And it's the will of God that we would be thankful in all things. It's the will of God that we'd be thankful for all things. It's God's will that we would be thankful people to him. The world is condemned because neither were they thankful. Thankfulness to God is the sacrifice that I bring unto the Lord. But here we have the sacrifice of a fool that he talks about that comes out. For they consider not that they do evil. The Bible says, bless not or curse not. You guys, I'm sorry, it's not the one I'm looking for. He says, James, it's coming to me. No, I read that today, and that's why it threw me off. It's not that verse where he says, he doesn't say vow not, but he says, it's another word for vow. Make not a foolish promise to God. And don't be saying, I swear by the Lord, I put my hand on the Bible, it's true. And don't say stuff like that. That's the sacrifice of a fool. Sacrifice of a fool. Well, I am never going to do that again. And God, I promise you, I'll never do that again. Sacrifice of a fool. And why? You know not what tomorrow brings. I'm going to go to church, God, the rest of my life. I promise you. Sacrifice of a fool. You don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. How bitter are you going to be in 2-3 weeks? How hurting are you going to be in 3 weeks? What's the world going to offer you up in the next 3 weeks? According to the news, we are now within range of a ballistic missile from North Korea. Us here on the East Coast are just on the edge. We're just out of it. But all the way over to at least the Mississippi and just into Chicago is now within range of North Korea from a madman with a nuclear missile. One missile makes it through. It hits the city where your loved ones live. Where are you going to be in 3 weeks? For they consider not that they do evil. Bill Shuey said this, the problem with talking too much is you might have said something that your brain has not thought of yet. I thought, that was good, brother. That was good. Reverence before God. This is the 12th time God is mentioned in the book of Ecclesiastes. And in this particular time, it's mentioned about the fear of the Lord, that God is to be feared and God is to be reverenced. The fear of God, he is far off and he's far better. He's far off and he's far better. Verse number 2 says, be not rash with thy mouth. My mind, of course, would go to Judges chapter 11 and verse 30. I'd love to spend some time in Judges 30, but there's a judge named Jephthah. Anybody know Jephthah? And Jephthah was facing Amnon and Ammon, and he was going to face them and fight them. And he called unto the Lord and made a vow unto God. And God, whatsoever come out of my house will be sacrificed unto you, O God, as a burnt offering, if you will deliver them into my hands. And he goes and fights them all. And he takes 20 cities, and time passes. But on the way home, him and God are talking, and he remembers his vow unto God. And as he approaches his house, out comes his daughter. And he begins to mourn, and he says, you have brought me sorrow this day, my daughter. And he says, because I have made a vow to God. She assures him, says, Dad, keep your vow unto the Lord. And he now takes his daughter, and he consecrates his daughter into the temple service, where she will be basically a life of chastity all of her life. And she now is celibate, and she'll never have children, and she'll never be able to carry on the line. Which means Jephthah is now taking out of the Messianic line. And Jephthah knows what his vow did to him. Now, if you believe he sacrificed his daughter, then you don't understand. Jephthah is an honorable man, and God never takes child sacrifice, and never would allow child sacrifice. And Jephthah did not sacrifice his daughter. That'd be foolish to believe. She mourned her virginity, not her life. And he sent her off after 2 months. And, of course, she's the virgin bride with no husband who's sent over to worship. And maybe you'll get an idea who Jephthah's daughter is. And who's Jephthah's daughter, Joe? It's the Church of Jesus Christ, and maybe you'll go back and take a look at that. Remember, a Christless interpretation is always wrong. Where's Christ and Jephthah's daughter? We want to take a look at Christ and Jephthah's daughter and try to understand what that story is telling us in the book of Judges. Beautiful picture of Christ there. But it came from a rash vow. God, if you do this for me and you kill the enemy for me, God, I will. And then later he says, I have to do this because I vowed my vow. He kept his vow to God, though it brought sorrow to his heart and to his daughter's heart. Be not rash with thy mouth. And there was a man who was rash in what he said, but God used it for his own glory. Be not rash with your mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything. Notice where speech comes from. What's the origin of speech? The heart. You're sitting in church. God's not just listening to what you say. He's listening to what your heart is saying. Be not hasty, let thine heart be hasty to utter anything. What's your heart saying right now? Some of it shows on your face. I have a book called Beware Your Attitude Showing. Yeah, that's a good book, all right? Anything before God, any prayer you bring before God, anytime you come before God, stop. He's God. He's God. Look what he says. God is in heaven. He's far off and he's far better. And this is the idea of transcendence. And I know you all like big words, and Kessel, he taught me all these. And God is transcendent. He's beyond us. He's beyond our capability of grasping. You can't bring God down and try to grasp the understanding. He's far beyond any of us. Far beyond. What are some big words from college you learned, Joe? That God is, Tozer used them, right? He's infinitude. Tozer made that one, right? He's transcendent. He's beyond any grasping of him. You can't imagine how holy God is. You can't grasp the holiness of God. You can't grasp his purity. You've never seen anything as pure as God. In my life, God has spoken to me once. And it knocked me down. Now, I don't know if you've ever been there. But you've never, and I've only had a glimpse, and I can't say that, I hadn't have visions and dreams and horses, and that would have been cool. But truth unmitigated will destroy you. And when God reveals truth to you, it will pierce your heart so hard you won't be able to speak or stand or move. And it will reveal who you are in absolute, utter horror. And this is what it is before God. You've never stood before anything like what you're going to stand before. You've never seen anything like what you're going to stand before. The terror of God will penetrate your soul to the point of fear like you can't imagine. It's not like fear of dying. It's not that kind of fear. It's when Adam hid himself, to understand what he's saying, is he's open and naked before him who we have to do. It's an exposure like you've never imagined. It's utter and absolute exposure. It's a vulnerability that you've never experienced before. It's like having all of your skin raw. Every inch of you. And every sensation, every nerve is alive and on fire. And God says Christ stands and his eyes are fire. And he says your works will be tried by his eyes. And that fire is a fire that sees and knows all. We can't grasp omniscience. Is there a limit to knowledge? Is there a limit to how much can be known? If matter is finite, then there's a limit to how much can be known about matter. But the spiritual world, is that finite also? Well, we would say yes, because only God is infinite. So there's a limited amount of knowledge that can be known about the spiritual world and the physical world. We have no idea how close we are to the maximum amount of knowledge that can be known. We may have only know 10% of the known universe of all knowledge that could be known, or we might know 1/1000% so far of all knowledge that exists in our universe, but we know it's finite. We also know the spiritual world is finite, therefore it's a limited amount of knowledge. So God knows all of that and all of that, but it says his understanding is infinite. So what's beyond that? What is there to know besides all of the universe, physical and spiritual? What else is there to know? Can you grasp his knowledge? And this is where God dwells. God is in heaven and you are on the earth. Let your words be few. Stop instructing him. You know God. You see what he's doing, God? You should make him stop. Right? Let's instruct God, God, you know. And you know what's happening over there, God? Have you seen that? He is just terrible, God. And how many of our prayer requests? Oh, God, heal her. Or what? Are you demanding? Instructing? Telling? Where's the heart when we come before God? Shall we demand of our God? And the most amazing verse to me is when God says, command ye me. Wouldn't that be nice? It's like the genie in the bottle, right? I don't think that's the way it goes. The reverence before God. Verse number 3, it says, For a dream cometh through a multitude of business, and a fool's mouth is known by his multitude of words. And boy, this is scary, right? And I think about that where it says, tossed about with every wind of doctrine, right? And you go through that, and it just... But the idea of the reverence is... Ryrie has a good note on this, where he said, nighttime dreams oftentimes reveal one's preoccupation with work. And probably Andy's been there, right? They hand you, he talks about, and they give him those 7 pages of blueprints, right? And you're like, oh, yeah, okay, we'll start tomorrow. Oh, all right. And you study something for a long period of time. If you've been to college, you can get preoccupied with your studies. And you lay down at night, your brain's going, and it's going over everything you went to that day, and a multitude of dreams. And but also, you can get these vanity dreams of what you're going to do in business and how you're going to do it and what you're going to do. It's the same thing with a soul winner. He can get that idea of all the people he was stopped that day, what would have happened, what could have happened, how it could be. And in a multitude of dreams, that's kind of how a multitude of words. He says, the two have the same. He's going to link the two in verse number 7 again also. For a dream cometh through a multitude of business, and a fool's voice is known by a multitude of words. When you don't know what to say, you'll say a lot. The length of my sermon is generally directly related to the amount of my study. The more I study, the shorter the sermon. Because I white line veto stuff and I get it down and down and down to the... But when I don't have time to study, especially to the conclusion, I don't know how to shut it down. And you get a multitude of words. A fool's voice is known by a multitude of words. When thou vowest to vow unto God, look at Numbers chapter 30. Numbers chapter, we're just about done. There's almost very, very little left. And we don't want this to get real heavy on us. We want to, I know you reverence God, but we want to get reminded on this side of God is God. He is transcendent. He is far beyond you. In Numbers 32. Numbers 30, verse 2. Let me clarify that. Numbers 30, verse 2. Chuck's back there going, would you make up your mind? And if a man vow a vow unto the Lord, we'll wait for Joe. He's a little slow. No, Joe, it's Old Testament. It's Old Testament, brother. It's Old Testament. Okay. If a man vow a vow unto the Lord, or swear an oath to bind his soul with a bond. Now, this is God's law, right? So we're not under the law, brother. Yeah, but we learn the mind of God here. He shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceedeth out of his mouth. And that's for you men. Right? Isn't it? You say, well, what about the ladies? Well, God has something different for the ladies because they're under submission. Right? So the ladies can get away a little more. Ah, yeah. If a woman also vow a vow unto the Lord, and bind herself by a bond, being in her father's house in her youth, and her father hear her vow, and her bond wherewith she has bound her soul, and her father shall hold his peace at her, then all of her vows shall stand, and every bond wherewith she hath bound her soul shall stand. But if her father disallow her in the day that she heareth not any of her vows, nor of her bonds wherewith she hath bound her soul shall stand, and the Lord shall forgive her, because her father hath disallowed her. So the first time he hears it, he goes, no, honey, no, you're not doing that. Then she doesn't do it, and she's forgiven for it. And if she had at all a husband, when she vowed or uttered aught of her lips, wherewith she hath bound her soul, and her husband heareth it, and held his peace at her in the day that he heard of it, then her vow shall stand, and her bonds wherewith she bound her soul shall stand. But if her husband disallow her on the day that he heareth it, not necessarily the day she said it, but the day he heareth it, then he shall make her vow which she vowed, and that which she uttered with her lips, wherewith she bound her soul, of none effect, and the Lord shall forgive her. So her husband and her father have the right to disallow her vow the day they hear it. Well, what if they don't do it that day? But every vow of a widow and of her that is divorced, whether they be bound, would they have bound their souls, shall stand against her. If she doesn't have the authority over her, of the man over her, then she's stuck with what she said. And if she vowed in her husband's house, or bound her soul by a bond with an oath, and her husband heard it, and held his peace at her, and disallowed her not, then all her vows shall stand, and every bond wherewith she hath bound her soul shall stand. But if her husband hath utterly made them void on the day that he heard them, then whatsoever proceedeth out of her lips concerning her vows, or concerning her bond of her soul, shall not stand. Her husband hath made them void, and the Lord shall forgive her. He repeats that. Every vow and every binding oath to afflict the soul, her husband may establish it, or her husband may make it void. But if her husband altogether hold his peace at her from the day to day, then he establish all her vows, or all her bonds, which are upon her. He confirmeth them, because he held his peace at her in the day when he heard them. But if he shall any ways make them void after that he hath heard them, then he shall bear her sin, or her iniquity. These are the statutes which the Lord commanded Moses between a man and his wife, between a father and his daughter, yet being in her youth and in her father's house. So you see how God comes in and talks about these vows that people would vow before God. And God says, if a man vows a vow to God, it stands. How long does it stand? No, how long is God? How quickly should we come to God and make a vow? I told the Lord I would preach for him. How long does that stand? I have come to the altar and said, Lord, I'll do whatever you'd have me to do. How long does that stand? I have come to the Lord and said, Lord, if you give me the strength, I will stop lying. Because I was a salesman. How long does that stand? I have come to the Lord, and I have given many a sins to the Lord. And I have said, Lord, if you will, I will. And I have. How long does that stand? I have said, Lord, I will read my Bible, and I will read through my Bible, and thank you for the Bible. How long does that stand? Now, if we're smart when we come to the Lord, we make a vow, we put term limits on it, right? Lord, I'll read my Bible this year. I can't tell you what I'm going to do next year, but I'm going to read it this year. Right? You say, well, yeah, it's better not to vow than to vow and not keep it, so I'm not going to vow. So you're not a man of your word. That's a lack of faith. You don't trust in the grace of God to be able to help you achieve it. We're going to take up a faith promise, and you're going to write on a slip, and you're going to say, this is what I promised to give every week for this year. And if you don't have the courage to do it, then you have lack of faith. You don't think God will take care of you this year? You don't think God will be sure? You don't think God will give you a vow that you can take a vow and keep it? And say, Lord, by the grace of God, Lord, I'll do this. How can we do it? We're so afraid of binding our hearts to God. Well, I'm so afraid I won't keep it. Well, yeah, but by the grace of God, what vow can't you keep? We've gotten into our whole thing here now where we're like, oh, no, don't ever vow to God. You know, because, man, if you don't keep it. Okay. If you have no intention of keeping it, I definitely wouldn't vow it. If you have you have a track history of blowing off God, I probably wouldn't make a vow tonight. That might be a bad idea. But I also am going to turn around and say, your lack of faith is not pleasing to God. Obviously, people made vows. God has statutes for it and rules for it. We could go over the 3 children that their parents dedicated to the Lord and then gave them to Christ and honored the vow. And God honored them. Anybody know a girl named Hannah? Who did she vow to God? Samuel. She said, Lord, you give me a child. I'll give him to you. And then she stayed home for 3 years or 5 years, depending on when they weaned the child. And when the child was weaned, she brought and gave him to the temple and kept her vow. Something wrong with that? You want great things from God? Do something great for God. Don't be scared to make a vow by the grace of God. By the grace of God, I can do something for God. By the grace of God, I can. Now, God might break my legs, and I won't be able to finish the race. That could happen. You know? And then what happens? Well, I promised God I'd walk 10 miles a day, and he broke my legs. Oh, okay, God. I'm going to have to do something different, aren't I? I'll wheel 10 miles a day. You say, well, what happens if something comes my way? Well, don't be too skittish to come before the Lord. Come thoughtfully, come reverently. But if you vow a vow to God, take it seriously. But don't be too afraid to vow a vow to God. Lord, if this comes my way, I'll do it. And then what happens? It comes your way. Lord, if you give me a person this week that will make it evident, I will share the gospel. I vow to you. You put something in God's hands and say, God, if you'll do this, and now what's going to happen? It's going to be inconvenient. It's going to be the wrong time. You're going to have something else to do, and it's going to surprise you when it happens, but you're going to have the chance. And guess what happens? You share the gospel, not because you care about souls, but because of your vow. And somebody gets saved. Why are you so afraid to vow a vow to God? I'm afraid I won't keep it. Why? Lord, I'm going to come pray an hour this Saturday. Well, what if I forget? I vowed to God. I've got 3 alarm clocks and a phone and 2 friends. I've got a way to make it happen. And if I take God serious, I can take my vow serious. And I can do it. You see, there's this balance in the Christian's life. Nowhere does he say don't vow. The Bible tells us. But he says, take it serious. In verse number 5, it tells us in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 5, obviously verse 4 tells us to do what we vowed, and God talks about it stands when you vow. And there's plenty of verses about that. Verse 5 says, better is that thou vowest not, that thou shouldest vow and not pay. Suffer not thy mouth to cause thy flesh to sin. Now that has been a verse that God has really used that, because the mouth talks from the passions of the heart. Are you getting sick, Angela? Oh, you poor baby. Passionate. Passion. Right? How many of you won't say something to somebody until you get mad enough? Right? Why are you looking? Never mind. All right. Eric went, oh, looked at his wife. Right? Right? How many know that passion can give you strength to do something you normally I wouldn't say that person, but I am so ticked right now that I'm going to say what I mean. Right? And it gives you the strength to say something that you wouldn't normally say. Oftentimes you'll oversay it and you'll say it wrong because you're angry. There's a passion involved. Then later you have to apologize because you say, I was just mad and I was being stupid. And it gave me more zeal than it should. But when you're mad, you'll tell the truth. No, you don't. Don't ever believe that. No, you don't tell the truth when you're mad. Passion. You ever see two young people madly in love? I don't. I haven't seen it in years. But right? And there's a passion, and they'll say things to each other. There's such passion involved, and out of the passion, right? Those. When I think of passions, the Bible talks about a sea, and it gets tossed, and the waves, and it's volatile, right? And that's that passion that's in our heart. When we're angry, when we're mad, people get passionate about abortion, and passionate about the Republicans, passionate about the Democrats, and passionate about either one of them, and passionate about something they're involved with, right? And they're passionate, and you can hear them get up, and that president or that congresswoman or somebody stands up and they give that speech with passion, and man, it invigorates people, and that passion of the heart. Right? But the trouble is, with passion of the heart comes stupid vows. Right? And this is where he says, don't allow your mouth to cause your flesh to sin. And that verse is suffer not thy mouth to cause thy flesh to sin. Boy, isn't it an amazing thing? How can your mouth cause a sinly flesh? I mean, my mouth can sin, but how does it make my body sin? To me, I see a clear sin of omission. I promise to do, and I don't. I promise to do, and my body doesn't. Or it could be a sin of commission. I promise to stop, but my body doesn't. Lord, I'll never go there again. Hey, body, where are you going? Hey, stop. Right? And I don't know how I got here, God. God knows. You walked, okay? I've actually had somebody say that. You know, he ended up in a bar, and he said, I don't know how I got there. I'm like, I know how you got there. I can tell you how you got there. I can tell the person who you called to get a ride from. Don't tell me you didn't know how you got there. And I woke up and here I was. No, that's not what happened. Suffer not thy mouth to cause thy flesh to sin. And that's where you're vowed. Watch out for passions. Watch out for that passionate sermon that makes you cry. Usually it's the length that makes you cry, but the passionate sermon that makes you cry, right? That passionate sermon. If you want to really affect people and get people at the altar, you always start a sermon with something really funny. Because when you get the emotions going, and then what you do is you get funny, then you come in and get really serious all of a sudden, and then you tell a story or something that brings people into that compassionate and sad thing that happened, right? And then you bring them back around and you get them to laugh again, and then you bring them back down to the sad. And if you can get this swing going as you preach, you'll fill the altar every time. And it's not the Holy Spirit. Watch out for it. Watch out for stories. They download them. 90% of the stories preachers tell are lies. It never happened. They heard about it. They heard some other preacher say it. They're stealing it off the internet or off something else. They read it in a book and they fashioned it to themselves. And watch out. Luckily, not among the Baptist. Suffer not thy mouth to cause thy flesh to sin. Neither say thou before the angel. Who's the angel, Kessel? Is that the angel of the Lord? It's not capitalized. Who would I say before the angel? It was an error. Oh, it was a mistake. I really didn't mean it. God, you know, I was just being stupid. And I was at the altar, and I know I said that last week, but God, who's the angel, right? The translation's messenger, right? There was that. The confession box, right? When you're at the confession box, right? And Joe, our Catholic boy. And That's one thing you haven't been. Maybe you should try it for a while.
Calvinist is basically.
Oh, Calvinist is basically Catholic. Yeah, you're right. So the confession box, probably not that. Who's the angel? Is it the Levitical priest that Ryrie thinks it is? That you might come to the Levitical priest and say to him it was an error, and there's a special vow that you can pay to try to get out of your vow. There's a special sacrifice you can bring, and that he might annul it. Can I have this thing annulled? Hey, can I come to the angel and, hey, God, can you annul this thing? And can we come to the person that I promised to help and say, hey, can you annul this? You can get a marriage annulled. Certainly, I can get my vow annulled, right? And like it never was, and. Say not, it was an error. It was a mistake. It was just passionate. Pay your vow. Pay your vow. Pay your vow. Pay your vow before the Lord, and pay your vow to the men that you said you would. I've never been lied to as much as until I became a pastor. See you Sunday, the most common lie I hear. Right? Yeah, we'll see you Sunday. Right? That's one of my reasons why I noticed in my heart as I searched God why I hate soul winning. Because I hate the expectation that builds from all the people that promise to come. I hate the expectation of seeing people. It's much better to lower your expectations and not expect anything, and then you're never let down. Right? The best way to deal with people is to lower your expectations of them. Well, I can't believe he lied. Are you kidding? I can't believe I ever told you the truth. Lower your expectations and you'll never be let down. Right? Now, is that a good way to live? I don't know. You can talk to me later about that. Suffer not thy mouth to cause thy flesh to sin, neither say before the angel, it was an error. Wherefore should God be angry with thy voice and destroy the work of thy hands? Notice again we're not going to go into this. I want you to yell at me, but there's a dual nature here that God is talking about, because the voice is not physical. It's not something to be touched. It's not something the utterance of your heart. This is the immaterial world affecting the material world. God is this immaterial being, and your thoughts and your voice towards him is an immaterial action between you and him. And as a result of this correspondence between me and God, the physical works of my hands gets destroyed. Think about the sequence here and how that works. This isn't just a sad heart. This isn't just God afflicting my conscience. This isn't God working on me in an immaterial way. It's God destroying the works of my hands. This is an interesting correspondence. It's like that person in Corinthians who takes the Lord's Supper unworthily, not discerning the Lord's body, and God strikes him physically ill. And this is where God talks about this spiritual and physical realm, and how the two intertwine and work together. And here we have this interaction that takes place between me and God alone, and nobody else even knows it took place. But God himself, as a result of this interaction and the falsehood of it, turns back to the works of my hands. Right? The greatest works that I've ever done are my children. Don't utter anything before God foolishly. From the multitude of dreams are many words, and there are also diverse vanities. Be careful. In your heart and in your mind, there's all kinds of vain and vanity things, and foolish thoughts and foolish things. We come to the Lord soberly, reverently, honestly, fearfully. And I place my vow before God. Now I do everything in my power to keep that vow, because I made it to God. That is honorable. It's not the coward that sits back, I'm not going to say anything to God. Don't want to be a fool. That's just lack of faith. Why can't God help you keep your promise? Is he that weak? Is your character so bad that your character you can't rely on a little bit? Yeah, but I've forgotten so many things. I do it wrong. Well, find a way to make it, remember it. I bet you I can find a way to remember it, right? Well, hang a hammer in front of your door. Every time you open it, it swings down. And that'll remind you. See, it's not hard to get a reminder, right? It's got a little note on the hammer. Dang, right? Read your Bible and say, oh yeah, you promised God. That's right. You'll be scared to go out that door. So, let's see what I write here. Fear thou God seems to be the theme of chapters 1 through 5, or at least verses of 1 through 5, is the fear of God. Verse number 4 is the theme is coming through, is God is to be reverenced. God is far off and far from, and God is high and transcendent above us. He's omnipotent, he's omniscient, he knows all, and hears all, he is all in all. There's nothing hid from him. He is everything. He is in heaven in a realm far beyond and greater than ours. And that we are approaching unto him, and he's invited us to come. We must be very careful and reverent with our words before him. We must watch out for our passions and the passions of our heart, for inside of our bodies and inside of our minds and in the incorporate part of me, my soul, there is many vanities and there's many diverse things, and therefore I must close my words down and make my words few and sharp and clear. And the theme is fear thou God. That's a great little text from the wisest man that ever lived. He said, you want to guide your life? Guide it this way. And that's a great section of Ecclesiastes. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's great for you tonight as we come to our God reverently and fearfully. And but don't be so afraid that you don't say anything. Amen? Uh-oh, Barb's twiddling her thumbs again. Am I in trouble, Barb? She's like, do you do that by habit?
I guess.
I used to do that. I used to actually twiddle my thumbs. And that's a sign of something. I don't know what it is yet. She's calling down lightning. Amen. Let's go to the Lord. Pray with me if you would. Lord in heaven, we're going to pray together as we come to you, Lord Jesus. We do hold you in reverence. You are awe-inspiring. As the psalmist said, my goodness extendeth not unto thee. He says, when I thought on these things, it was too painful for me to know them. God, you are awesome. And I pray that our awe of you may stand. Forgive me, Lord, for flippancy. I know, God, it's in my heart, and God, I struggle with the seriousness of God. So, Father, help us, I pray, as we come before you. We don't want to be, what do they call it, Lord, stiff-necked and starch-collared. But, God, we do want to hold to the holiness of our God. Thank you, Lord, for your goodness. Thank you for God's people. I love God's people. Thank you for the privilege of preaching the Word of God. Bless this night in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's